What's going on, guys? And I have an important announcement. As you guys have seen on Facebook, the War Cry podcast now has a merch store through Redbubble. What you'll do is you'll hit that link below, select the logo that you like. You know, we got a wolf logo, we got that Bigfoot scratch or the Dogman scratch logo. Once you select the logo, you'll go down, hit your styles. If you want a T-shirt, if you want a sweatshirt, or if you want different things, or a sticker or whatever. You'll select the color of that, and then your size, and then you hit that checkout button. And hitting that checkout button and getting that T-shirt supports the podcast. And I appreciate everyone that listens, and it's amazing, and I do truly appreciate it. But with that said, let's get to the episode. So run me my music. It's very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Get that crowd warmed up. It's Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
And I had not talked to this other individual yet, that told me about the Indians had camps there, nothing like that yet. Well, a few days later, they called me back. Her name was Angela. Her husband's name was Dennis. And Angie said, Dennis wants to talk to you. So she puts him on the phone, and he said, Angela said that you think that your house is haunted because your Amish neighbors are done witchcraft against you. And I said, yeah, I do think that. And he said, well, I'm sure that's true, but you have a way bigger problem than that. And I said, what's the bigger problem? And he said, have you ever heard of the Greenville Treaty? And I was like, no. And he said, well, it's a treaty between a bunch of the American Indians and the American government. And he said, the treaty line might even be on your property. He said, it's very close to your house.
Oh, man.
And he said, I only know this because I lived with the Amish. He said, they would never tell you this, but he said, they told me. He said, after the Greenville Treaty was signed, he said there was still fighting going on. Somebody from each side would accidentally cross the treaty line and the other people would murder them. There were battles fought. He said there were battles fought on your land, 100%. And he said, but it's worse than that. He said, when the Indians lost the land because they didn't abide by the treaty, he said they really felt that they were wronged. And he said they placed a curse on the land. And he said, that is your problem. He said, he goes, the Amish thing's real. You are dealing with that. But he said, this is a way bigger problem. You built your house on cursed land. And the interesting part is he said the Amish ancestors, their ancestors weren't called Amish. They were just settlers from Germany or wherever. And he said they knew the Indians. And he said, some of them, he said the witchcraft they practice is a mixture of old world witchcraft and the rituals and things that the Indians did. They mixed that all together and they call it powwow. I found out all of that was true. But he said, go look up this whole thing historically, what I'm telling you about the Greenville Treaty. I'm telling you it's the truth. So I looked it all up and it was all true. I talked to one of my Amish neighbors and she said, yeah, we know for a fact people died here. There were battles fought on our land and people died here. And so at that point, I prayed about it, like fervently prayed about it. And I felt very clearly that God showed me that people were murdered on your land. They're not buried here, but they were murdered here. And also, in addition to that, the curse is true. It really did happen. And you're living under it now because, unbeknownst to you, you came along and built a house on the land. So it turned out that me and those two, the Angela and Dennis, those two individuals, on, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, it was towards the end of December, around December 20th, 2009, the three of us performed an exorcism on the house and the property. And I mean, I was thorough. I addressed anything I thought could even possibly be going, related to the haunting and going on there. And we took communion. I poured, not only did we like break all the curses and everything in Jesus' name, we anointed everything with anointing oil. We went over the entire property, all through the house. We anointed everything in the house, and basically took authority in Jesus' name and said, "You are leaving in Jesus' name." And when I took communion, we did it out back in the yard, like down in the field. And not only did we take communion, I poured out the grape juice on the ground, and I said, "That represents the blood of Christ. You cannot stand against it. No matter why you are here, you have to leave now. I take authority over you. And here's 3 Christians praying in agreement. You have to go." Okay. After that day, I never had paranormal activity in the house again.
Wow.
The house
Wow.
sold so quickly that within 60 days of the day we did the exorcism, I was moved. That's how quickly it sold, and that everything closed and I moved on. Man. Now, believe me, I'm leaving out many, many, many details of the experiences I had. There were many, and it was horrific. But I can tell you this, the reason for the activity around the door of the house, there was a demon there that called itself the doorkeeper.
Man.
And it exited and entered through that door. And that was why there was so much activity around the door.
Man.
Now I knew, from doing exorcism, a lot of times when you are doing an exorcism on a person, there will be a demon that is called the gatekeeper. That's its job. And you want to deal with that demon. You want to get it out of there, because its job is to let the weaker demons go, to try to fool you and keep the stronger ones there. And its job is also to bring in other demons to try to make the person more possessed, so they can't get, exorcised, or however you want to say it, get rid of the demons and delivered. So I was aware there was that kind of a demon, but to come to the conclusion that that's what I was actually dealing with, it was pretty, it was unnerving, but then I came through it victoriously. So
let me so the one thing about, like, so on this, for this podcast, and one thing that I'm very intrigued about, but also too that, like, I've gotten stories from and traditions. So one thing that's always done in our culture, in Native culture, in my Native culture, really in general, but Native culture, they always say when you buy land or you buy a house, you don't know what's there before before you were there.
yeah.
And one thing that gave me literally goosebumps when you said, what you're talking about, the Greenville Treaty, in those natives that were over there or in that area, and then also adding, I'm getting goosebumps even saying this, but I had experiences. I haven't told this on the podcast, but since you can relate about the mixing of that old world kind of, like you said, like old world is in like the continent over in Europe, like that old world type of
witchcraft.
Yes.
Yes.
And you mix that with, the natives, old way, I call it medicine, but
yes.
But magic is, kind of how, non-natives describe it, or witchcraft, or those different types of things.
Yes.
I got literal goosebumps when you said that they were mixing that, because that still happens today. It's a very prevalent thing, especially, I hear it out in the Carolinas, especially in the Appalachian Mountain. They do that old, like I said, that old way Europe, that witchcraft, but man, that is, I got literal goosebumps. I haven't heard a story and haven't heard, it be described the way that you described it when it came to the mixing of that, because that's a very strong, I guess you could say, magic. Very, very strong, and it's almost hard to beat. It's very hard to overcome that.
And the thing is, they're so good at hiding what they are doing too, because most people think of the Amish as these good, devout Christian people, and they have no idea that they dabble in these things. And a whole nother thing, you have, they have a book that's very prevalent, and most of them deny it, but it's claimed that in every Amish household is a Bible and this book. And the book is called Long Lost Friend. It's a witchcraft book of powwow. And they practice this stuff, okay? But it gets worse than that, because there's other books that they use, and the books of Moses, but they're not really the books of Moses from the Bible. They're witchcraft books from Mesopotamia that are ancient, and they actually teach you how to conjure demons. They are heavily into this. On my podcast, I interviewed an ex-Amish lady. And when I brought that up, she said, yep, I was encouraged to read those books, and I was like, yeah, I said, that's the thing. I mean, it is just full on satanic as can be. And, there's places in Holmes County, and I have pictures in the book. I have video. If you look up the Nightmare in Holmes County trailer on YouTube, that's the trailer from when the first edition of the book came out. And I take you right to one of the locations and show you beyond the shadow of a doubt, there is Satanism happening here. And you can see it plain as day. But, there's pictures in the book of the meeting site that was right by my house too. And, I found a cow skull hanging from a tree right by the road. And I through research, I found out that that's one way a witch will mark his territory to let other people know that his services are available if they need them. And I later found, and this just made me sick because I love dogs. I love animals. They had killed a dog and hanged a dog from a tree in that exact same area. Now, to tell you how much the Holmes County Sheriff's Department is in on covering this all up, I took photographs of it and I called the police. I was not happy. And I later went back and got all the police reports. And this report, they have the most terrible report writing abilities in the Holmes County Sheriff's Department. It's atrocious. It's like, come on, you can't write more accurate and better reports than this. This is terrible. But in the report for that instance where I called the sheriff, they said they never addressed why would a dead dog be hanging from a tree. They said, oh, it looks like it must have got hit by a car or something. No, it didn't. But crazy. How are you addressing that it's hanging in a tree? You're not even going to bring that up. It was completely just, glossed over, no chance that it's witchcraft, and I found an article from 1983, and it's in the book, where they found, and it's the guy that's now the sheriff. He was a deputy that they talked to when they wrote the article in 1983. And he, they said there was a satanic cult in Holmes County, and that they had found a decapitated horse and all its blood was drained. And that told them that it was a ritual. And he sits there, after this, and the article in the paper saying it's a cult, but that same individual that later became the sheriff, he's saying, we have no information whatsoever about any cults in Holmes County. Like, really? You absolutely do. And how can you say that after finding this?
Let me ask you this question. In my hometown, or not really my hometown, but where my parents reside, there is I used to do investigations into a alleged cult activity. You talk about that detail of the dog. I found a similar dog. It wasn't hanging up, but you could tell it was in, like someone had done something to it and then laid it on a blanket in a ritualistic type manner, I would say. And to kind of ask that question and kind of follow up on why they cover up. Why do you think that? Why do you think that they don't say anything about this activity?
Because it's the first or second largest population of Amish in the world. People think that Amish don't vote. They absolutely do. 100% they vote. And he's an elected official. If he starts cracking down on the Amish and arresting them, I mean, you couldn't even. I had multiple incidents there when the Amish messed with me that I had to call the sheriff. They would not arrest them. Period. They would not arrest them. And I mean, I share all these details. There's so many instances, and I share those in the book. But it's like, okay, if you do your job and you start, don't treat them special, you start holding them accountable to the law, then guess what? They're all going against you in the next election and you're losing your job. So you're going to look the other way. And that's exactly what they do.
Man, yeah, because that's one thing that's kind of crazy. Like, I've never, I haven't had a lot of experience with that set of people, but but for them to just to kind of look over all these different activity, especially with a meeting place being not very far from your house.
Yeah.
To me, what I mean, I guess really my next question would be is, so once you guys overcame, the haunting and the demonic activity and that witchcraft, um, and you basically just everything just stopped. You sold the house, and then, um, you know, I guess really transitioned it over to kind of how you got to that second house. I guess you could say.
Okay. I'm kind of scrambling to find a place to move into because the people that bought it were Mennonites and that bought my other house in Holmes County, and they were not very nice to deal with, and they wanted me out of there right away. And I'm like, man, I'm scrambling here, So I find this other house in Tuscarawas County, and the real address is 225th Street. I just don't say what town it's in, but I move into that house, and it's a house that a very well-known realtor had bought at a sheriff's sale, made, redone the inside, painted everything, new carpet, whatnot. And he was flipping it. And he was kind enough that he said, look, I know you sold your other house. I know you had equity. I know you're getting your mortgage. I already know that. He said, so just so you don't have to move twice and put all your stuff in storage and then move again, he said, go ahead and move in. And when your mortgage closes, we'll settle up. And he said, if it takes a while, I'll charge you rent, but we'll deal with that down the road. I said, okay. Very kind. That was very nice of him to do that. So I move into this house, and I'm in the process of buying it, and stuff keeps happening. The very first night I'm in the house, I'm laying on the floor in an upstairs bedroom. I didn't even have time to set my bedroom up or anything. I was exhausted, and me and my cats are laying on the floor, and I'm staring at this closet door in the room, and it's like I heard a voice in my head say, you don't know anything about the history of this house. And then I thought to myself, that's true. I don't know anything about the history of this house. So I said like a little spiritual warfare prayer, like I had learned to pray in Holmes County. And I just generically renounced any sin that ever happened in the house. And I bound the demons and told them to leave. Well, that's all good, but demons don't generally leave that easily. But binding them, you can still do. But, I prayed that little prayer and went to sleep. Weird things began happening in the house. I started noticing that, at night I would go around the house and lock all my doors. And as I would start to go up the stairs, I would feel very strongly again. Now, keep in mind, I'm somebody that experienced an extreme haunting. And I would feel like something's watching me. Somebody is watching me. And I would stop. I would start to go up the stairs, and I would stop, and I would turn around and look over my shoulder and look across the front living room. And this thought would always come into my mind. I feel like I'm in a funeral home after hours. And I would specifically think of a funeral home that I was very familiar with. And I would think, I'd think to myself, I feel like I'm in that funeral home after hours, like alone. That would be a creepy feeling, and I would feel like that in my own house, but I didn't know why. Well, after living there a few days, I went home from work one night, and I went upstairs and I opened my bedroom door, and my bed was sitting crooked. It was not sitting the way I had it, you know. And I thought, how in the world did my bed get moved? My cats can't move my bed. And so I convinced myself that, when I moved in, a cousin of mine that's an electrician, I hired him to do some jobs for me. And one of the things was he wired in, the outlet in the bedroom for satellite TV. So I could watch TV in my room while I was, getting ready to go to bed or whatever. But he had done that when I first moved in. And we're at this point, we're over a week later, and I'm thinking like, or it's around a week later. Okay. So I'm thinking, okay, my cousin came in here today when I was at work, and for some reason, he just checked his wiring on the satellite outlet, and he moved my bed, and he just forgot to put it back. I'll ask him about it tomorrow. That's all it is. It's nothing to be scared of. I got nothing to worry about. I'm always trying to convince myself that if anything's going on, it's just I'm nervous because of my last experience, So I straightened my bed and I lay down in bed. And when I shut my eyes, I had a vision. And in this vision, it was like I was immediately standing outside my bedroom door and I'm looking down the staircase. And what I'm seeing, when you picture something in your mind's eye, it's not crystal clear. It was very crystal clear, very vibrant colors. The definition of the image was razor sharp. And I saw a hooded figure coming up the stairs. And when I say that, I mean it looked like a figure wearing a hooded black cloak. And I could see its face. And it looked like an older man. And he had the complexion of a body in a casket. It looked like he was dead. And he had a creepy grin on his face. And he wasn't looking at me. He was kind of like looking down, and he was a little bit round shouldered, and he was just like kind of gliding up the stairs, so to speak. Just, it was very creepy. And I opened my eyes and I was like, where in the world did that come from? Because it was such a weird experience. And I thought, I'm not scared. I know my cousin moved my bed. I'll ask him about it tomorrow. Why am I having these creepy images in my mind, And I shut my eyes, and boom, every time I shut my eyes, I would be back standing outside the bedroom door looking down the stairs, and there's that hooded figure coming up the stairs. This happened about 4 times. And then I said out loud, I said, I renounce every sin that's ever happened in this house, and I bind the demons in Jesus' name. And I shut my eyes. No more image, no more vision. I went to sleep. I told 4 people that story. And I told them, and I kept saying, there's no way there's anything to this. I couldn't live in 2 haunted houses back to back. So, there's no way there's anything to this, but listen to what happened. I thought it was odd. Well, so I had 4 witnesses that I had shared this story. Okay. And at this point, I knew nothing about the history of the house. As it turns out, my neighbor comes over the following weekend, and he introduces himself and then leaves. And then on Sunday, like the next day, he came over again, and my mom and my sister and my brother-in-law had stopped to see me. And we were standing on the front porch talking. And my neighbor comes back over, and he has his girlfriend with him, and just a really nice guy. And he's telling me, hey, we all help each other around here. If you need something, let us know. We all help each other. And I said, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And he said, well, that's the good news. Now for the bad news. And I knew what he was going to say. And I looked right at him. Now, keep in mind, I just met him the day before, so I'm really out on a limb. But I said, you're going to tell me my house is haunted. And his mouth dropped open and his eyes got big. And he said, yeah, man, your house is haunted. Some dude killed himself in your basement a long time ago.
Oh my goodness.
And I turned around and I looked at my mom and I said, I told you. Because I had told my mom, I had confided to her. I said, if I didn't know better, I would swear something did follow me from Holmes County. But I said, I know it couldn't have, because I know that exorcism we did was successful. And I said, but if I didn't know any better, I would swear there's something here in this house. So I had told her that. And after my neighbor told me, that about the suicide, I looked at my mom and I said, I told you. And she said, that's right, you did. And my sister's going, oh no, what's he talking about? Not this again, And sure enough, and I was very confident at that point. Hey, I dealt with it in the last house. I'll deal with it now. I'm going to get rid of it.
Let me ask you this real quick. Did your family believe you the first time?
Oh, absolutely, because they experienced things there too.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Sure. I'll give you an example. You had asked me if it was possible that the apparition that was seen by the weird guy on the construction crew could have been a neighbor. And, no, for multiple reasons, no, that's not possible. But my sister one day was at my house and she was there alone, and she came out the patio door and went to walk around the house. And my dog, Maggie, was barking like extremely aggressively. Maggie was a very special dog, and it was like she had a sixth sense. And Maggie was barking very aggressively. And my sister said, it's just me, Maggie. And she kept walking, and she glanced down and she looked up and then looked away with not expecting to see anything. She saw a guy standing in the yard wearing old fashioned clothes. And he was standing on the hill that was between my driveway and the property line where my neighbor's field started. And when she did a double take, he was gone. But she said Maggie wasn't even looking at me when she was barking. She was looking past the house at what I saw then. So they knew. My mom had seen the shadow person in my house in Holmes County. That's all in the book. She had seen it too. So they knew I was telling the truth. They knew what I had experienced. They had even assisted me with exorcisms. So they knew, that this stuff's for real. But to think of having to go through it again, that's kind of crazy, But I knew at that point, even though I had already started writing Nightmare in Holmes County, I knew I am to put that book on the back burner, even though it's the first of the two houses. It's going to be, that book's going to be released second. I have to put all my effort into this book in researching this. And this book, the title will be 225th Street. I knew it that day. Instantly, I knew all of that.
That was part 3 of my conversation with Patrick Meechan. On the next part, we're going to be discussing the second home that he lived in that was haunted, literally back to back from the home in Holmes County. In this episode that you just heard, there's a lot of interesting tidbits that he talks about when it comes to the relationship between Native Americans or American Indians to the government. And one thing that I wanted to say on this episode, at the end of this episode, was that a lot of times in those back in those days when it came to those treaties, a lot of the government would instigate different things and different tactics to make the natives basically break the treaty and do those certain types of things. I think Patrick kind of misspoke on a part of that, but that's fine. He does his research through different types of means, such as like government entities and government records, and so the government's going to say what they're going to say. But we know in the Native community that a lot of times the government would instigate and cause us as a people to react, and then causes us to quote unquote break the treaty. And to be honest with you, we still deal with that today with employment or housing or things like that, different things that happen to us. And I know certain some people can agree with that, but I appreciate you guys listening to this third part. The fourth part will be coming out next week. I don't know the date, but I hope you enjoyed part 3, and I'll catch you on the next one.